Hi, my name is Anshu and welcome to my channel Bottleneck. This is a Scala design pattern series. In this series, we are going to learn and implement design patterns with respect to Scala. In our previous video, we had implemented trait AppArc, which was extended to car config and truck config. In this video, we will be implementing universal main, which will be extended to car and truck, and we will be passing AppArc as a field, and we will define a run method that will run the particular class with a given config, which will be passed from the command line eventually. Now, before we get into further development, let's review what we have done till now. Here we had defined a trait AppArc. Now, the objective is that we don't want to initialize AppArc, rather we want to extend it, or we want to create any class that will extend AppArc and override the field app name. But in this given scenario, anyone can initialize this trait with a new keyword. So how we can convert that into our given objective? So we can do that by making it an abstract class. So let's convert it to abstract class. Abstract class should have an abstract field. Alright, so we need to have an abstract field. Okay, now we have to make some changes in our car config and app name and our truck config. Alright, given this, we are all set. Let's now implement our universal main. Let's implement a method or a trait called universal main with config. Alright, it's always a good idea to give a meaningful name. Alright, now our universal main has a run method. Let's give it a name, run with Spark, as we are going to use Spark. Okay, and as any other main, it should return a unit. Now, how are we going to incorporate our AppArc here? So we are going to use type class inheritance. So let's use a type T. Now this type T will be a lower bound. So watch closely how I implement a lower bound, and it is going to be app arc. Alright, now this is a lower bound to AppArc, meaning that type T is a subtype of AppArc. So we can pass a value called config, which will be of type T. So now it makes more sense. Now the config can be either car config or truck config. Now it is going to be unit. How are we going to pass Spark? One way is we can pass it as implicit, but if we pass it as implicit, anyone can overwrite it, or it will not be clear what exactly the implicit we are passing, what is the value name. So rather we will pass it as a higher order function. So it will be, so user who is implementing or extending this universal main will be bound to use it. So let's pass it as Spark session, which will be returning a unit. Okay, all right, till now we are good. Let's also implement a main method or a main object from which we are going to enter the application. So it is going to be main app. All right, we will extends app. Okay, so this is from where we are going to enter into the application. Now let's keep it as is. Let's implement the car and truck. So let's implement car class. It's going to be a car class. In this car class, we are going to extend universal main, extends universal main with config. All right, now it will ask us to implement few methods. Let's check if it is done. Okay, let's override this. Let's copy it and let's go to our car class. Let's type in as override run with Spark. All right, it is already giving us. Now as we are passing this value Spark, now this we know that it is a Spark session. Alright, so this Spark is a Spark session, so we will import Spark dot implicits. Alright, so we will perform a small test here to see if we are able to create a data frame, and we are also going to read the config. So another thing that we are going to read is the config. So config is of type T. Alright, so let's create a car config here. So car config, we will have it as config dot as instance of, and we will pass the name car config. Okay, so now this becomes a part of car config. Alright, let's create a data frame. So it is going to be sequence. Alright, give it a value 1 comma say car 1, and give it a value as 100 or 1000. Now let's copy this. Sorry, let's copy this. Okay, now let's paste it here again, and let's paste it here. Okay, let's give it a name, a proper name. 2 3 4, we have 4 cars, and let's give it an ID 2 3 4. All right, now let's convert it to data frame. Here we need to add the key values. All right, so it has to import. Okay, let's give it a value. All right, so what we have done is we have to import everything from the implicit. Okay, here we need to give it a field ID comma, we can say what we should call it as a model. Okay, let's call it as a model, that makes more sense. And this, let's call it as cost. Okay, cost. Okay, now we need to df dot filter, and we need to filter on what, let's say column. So column we need to import. Okay, so let's import, let's copy this till here. Let's import dot functions dot everything. All right, so now we have the column. Okay, so what would be the column name? It will be cost, and let's say if it is greater than let, and let it is going to be car config dot, let's say cost. Okay, so now we have this, and we do show, and we do 10 comma false. Okay, so this is how we are going to display the value that we are going to see. Alright, so we are having one error, it should not be a dot, we don't need a dot. Okay, okay, perfectly fine. So car is implemented. Let's do something with the truck. Let's keep it simple for truck, because this is just a demo. So we will create a truck class, oh sorry, add, and let's rename it. It has to be named properly. So let's refactor, rename, let's make it truck, and refactor. Okay, extends universal main with config. Let's override the method, override dev run spark. All right, let's also get the spark here, spark, and let's implement it. And for here, let's say val truck config is equal to config dot as instance of, and we will pass the value truck config. All right, so till now we are good. Let's print the value here itself, println, and we will say truck config, because being it as a case class, it has a toString method, so it will print the truck config. We can do same thing here as well. We can print the car config here to see it is in action. So println, we can say car config. All right, so it's going to print the car config. We have the truck config. Now let's implement the body of main. All right, so what we need here is we need to somehow catch hold of our configs and our class that we have created. So let's first create a map of apps. All right, it will be a map. So watch closely what I'm doing. It's a map of string. So let's give it a name. So first we have created cars, and it's going to be class of, and here we are going to give car. Okay, all right. Same thing we are going to do with trucks. Okay, so why we are doing this, we will come to know shortly. We will be using this to instantiate the constructor that we have for each class and call the run method. Okay, so let's import the truck as well. Alright, so we have done it. Now let's pass the arguments. So val passed args is equal to, so it will be basically option of app arg. Okay, now let's import it. Now it will be app arg dot parse, and there it will be an args. Alright, so now this is, let's say, parse b parsed. Okay, the spelling is fixed. Alright, so we are parsing the argument now. Now once the argument is parsed, it can have none or it can have a value. Let's implement a pattern match on that. Parsed arg match. So now what we need is we need to have the value. So we need to have the options. That is going to be the first case. Second case is it can return none, so it means that we don't have anything. So let's keep it as is, anything other than what we have. So let's print it, println, and let's give it a message, invalid argument or invalid class or invalid apps. Okay, now here watch closely, we have to get the app name first. So we have the app class that we need to create. This app class will be from app maps, and we will get the options dot, and we have this app name. All right, and if it is not found, we need to also handle this. So let's throw an exception here, throw new runtime exception. That makes more sense, and we can say that no valid app name found. Okay, so if there is no valid app name, it's going to throw an exception. All right, so till now we have got this value. Now what? So let's create an instance of app. So we call it app instance. So how we are going to create an instance here? All right, so watch closely what I am doing. App class. Okay, now we call the declared constructor. So get declared, and do we have this get declared constructor? Okay, now on this we will create a new instance of it. So this is how we are going to initialize the class. So let's see what is the type of app instance. It's a universal main config. So now it is universal main config. So every class that extends universal main config now has a run method. So we have to call this run method with the config that we have. Before that, we also need a Spark session. So let's name it as Spark, which will be basically a Spark session. All right, this Spark session will be Spark session. Okay, dot, then we are going to call the builder method. All right, and we need to have a master. Now one thing to note, if you are passing master from your command line argument, like if you are running it via Spark Summit, this will overwrite whatever settings you are providing for Spark. If you don't have any Spark related conf that you are providing from Spark config, it will be using what we have defined here. So it doesn't mean that if we define master as local, it will always be local. If you are passing it as yarn, it will be yarn. for that particular app. So we give the app name, that will be options dot app name. All right, then we enable Hive and we do so get or create. Okay, so now this creates the Spark session. All right, now the last piece, we have to implement app instance dot, and then we have to call this run with method. Here we are going to call the options. All right, now watch closely how we are going to pass this Spark. So we just need to provide the Spark session because it returns unit, so rest is implemented. All right, so till now we have implemented our universal main. I have implemented, and we have done the main app as well. Universal main is done. Now let's try and run this. Before that, let's add the modify the run parameters that we have. So let's okay, here in this main app we are going to modify the run configuration. All right, so we know first we need to, let's take a look what we have in car config. In car config we have app name and we have cost. Okay, so if we, let's copy this app name, and the name is car config. We need to be very specific about the case, because again it is going to throw an error. So first thing that we are going to pass is the car config. Then so we have two parameters as we have seen, so we need to pass on those values. And how are we going to pass it? So we will do app name. So what was the app name? Cars. If you remember, we had given the name cars. Okay, if you provide a wrong app name, it is going to break. And we provide the cost, say let's cost, we provide us 200, okay, or 2000. Let's just confirm it once. So in our car app we have provided 1000. Okay, let's change it to 2000, 3000 and 4000. All right, now let's modify this, and let's try to provide the value. First is car config, and we have to do this app name, which will be cars, and we will be having cost, which will be having a value of 2000. All right, so if we apply and okay, now let's run this and let's see if we get our results as expected. All right, so we are running this app. All right, so first thing is we are going to see using the Spark has started. Okay, yeah, so first thing is it has printed the car config. As we see, the car config that we provided is the app name cars and the value 2000, and this is the value 3000 and 4000, which is greater than 2000. So it is working perfectly fine. Now let's test it for trucks. So for trucks, the truck config is, the name is truck config, and we have age, app name is trucks. All right, so control C, and let's modify this main app. All right, so let's rename it to truck config, and it's an age. So age, let it be, say age, we can put it as 15. Okay, apply and run. So now if we run it, we are going to see this in action. It is going to print the truck config. Alright, it has thrown an error saying that the truck config cannot be casted into car config. Alright, so there is an issue. What we have done wrong with truck config is, here we have implied as truck config. Alright, so it is a truck config looks fine. Let's get into truck. Okay, so truck config, let's see our main app. Have we modified truck config app? Okay, here it cannot be cars, it has to be trucks. Okay, hopefully the name should be correct. If not, then we are going to get the error. Let's go to our main app. Yeah, it is trucks. Let's run it. So now it is going to give us the correct output. So the bottom line is we need to be very peculiar with the keywords and the names, and the magic will happen. See, it is not running the truck config. So this completes this part of the video where we have implemented the truck config successfully. So we till now we have implemented car config and truck config independently on each of the class car and trucks. Now we will have few more changes or improvisation on this in coming up video. So if you enjoyed this video, then please like and subscribe, and see you around in the next video. Thank you.